On a chilly March morning at Daytona in 1963, a Chevrolet rolled onto the track. At first glance, it looked like any other car. Its engine bay was tidy, stock components gleaming under the morning sun. The block was standard. The heads appeared ordinary. The carburetor was legal. To the untrained eye, it was nothing remarkable. But as soon as the engine fired, the air changed. A low, menacing growl rolled across the asphalt, and anyone who heard it knew this car was different. Lap times dropped in ways that should have been impossible. Gears shifted with surgical precision. The throttle response was instant. And the sound, it wasn't just fast. It was intelligent, almost deliberate, like the engine knew exactly what to do before the driver even touched the pedal. NASCAR had seen fast engines. They had seen powerful engines, but never one that defied understanding itself. Inside the pits, veterans squinted at clipboards, scratching numbers into notebooks that no longer made sense. Lap after lap, the Chevrolet moved, as if reality itself had bent to its will. Rival crews whispered in disbelief, trying to decipher the secret. Inspectors tapped, measured, and weighed every component they could reach. Everything was within regulations. Every gauge, every bolt, every spark plug appeared legal, and yet the car moved with an authority that shattered their assumptions. It wasn't cheating. It was genius, and genius, as they were about to learn, could be untouchable. This was Smokey Yunick's engine. Already notorious for bending rules without ever breaking them, Yunick had done more than tweak an engine. He had rewritten what was possible. While other teams focused on displacement, carburetors, and compression ratios, Smokey asked different questions. What if airflow could be manipulated mid-combustion? What if friction could be reduced by geometry alone? Could an engine think, anticipate, and outsmart its competition? To the men enforcing the rules, it was terrifying. To the competitors, it was maddening. And to Smokey, it was just another day at the garage. Rumors spread faster than the car itself. Mechanics spoke of labyrinthine blueprints filled with cryptic codes, tolerances that seemed impossible to achieve, and components that no one had ever seen before. Some swore it was black magic. Others called it forbidden science. But the results were real. Cornering was sharper, acceleration was brutal yet precise, and the engine responded to every driver input with near-human intelligence. Pit crews were powerless. Officials were flustered. Competitors were obsessed. And the car? Calm, unassuming, untouchable. Junior Johnson, who would later become a legend, admitted that racing against Yunick's creation felt like fighting a shadow. It wasn't just fast, he recalled. It anticipated you. You didn't drive it, it drove you. That was the essence of the mystery engine. Not brute force, not flashy parts, but intelligence. Pure, calculated, untouchable intelligence that no inspection, no rulebook, and no human could contain. Every victory was a quiet humiliation for those who thought they understood the sport. Every lap completed was a reminder that genius could exist in plain sight, invisible, legal, and devastatingly effective. And the panic wasn't limited to competitors. NASCAR itself was scrambling. Inspectors drafted new checks, sent engineers to Daytona, attempted every test in their manuals, and failed. Every measurement confirmed legality. Every observation confirmed dominance. Smokey had anticipated every move, every suspicion, every attempt to uncover his secret. To the sport's governing body, it was unnerving. They had rules, but rules could not measure intelligence. Rules could not stop creativity. And for the first time, NASCAR was facing an opponent that couldn't be regulated. Yet the Chevrolet continued its silent rebellion. Its engine hummed like a predator, ordinary to the eye, extraordinary in practice. The driver felt its rhythm, its foresight. Competitors obsessed over what they could see, while Smokey manipulated what they couldn't. Each race, each lap, each corner became a subtle psychological war. Rival crews tore apart cars in vain, trying to replicate the impossible. Mechanics whispered in disbelief, engineers cursed under their breath, and inspectors left Daytona with notebooks full of questions they couldn't answer. And through it all, Smokey Yunick remained calm, almost invisible, letting his creation dismantle assumptions, disrupt authority, and rewrite the rules of racing without ever touching them. This was the beginning of a story that would shake stock car racing to its core. Not a story of cheating, not a story of luck, but of vision, audacity, and brilliance. 1963 would mark the year when a single engine proved that authority could be outsmarted, that intelligence could dominate power, and that one man could redefine the boundaries of possibility. What Smokey Yunick built wasn't just an engine. It was a challenge, a threat, a revelation. And by the time the checkered flag fell, the entire racing world would know. This Chevrolet, this unassuming black machine, had changed the sport forever. On a chilly March morning at Daytona, a Chevrolet rolled onto the track that no one, not a single inspector, had been able to categorize. Its engine bay seemed ordinary. The block was stock. The heads looked standard. Yet the moment the car roared down the straightaway, every veteran in the stands, every rival in the pit, felt it. Something was impossible. Lap times were shaving seconds that should have been unthinkable. Gears shifted like clockwork. Throttle response was immediate, and the sound low, menacing, almost unnatural, made the competition flinch. NASCAR had seen powerful engines before, but they had never seen one that didn't behave according to their understanding of physics. This was Smokey Yunick's mystery engine, a machine that defied both expectation and authority. From the very beginning, the car was a challenge to belief. Smokey Yunick, already notorious for bending rules without ever breaking them, had taken what engineers considered rigid limitations and turned them into opportunity. While teams focused on displacement, compression ratios, and carburetor size, Yunick was asking different questions. What if airflow could be redirected mid-combustion? What if friction could be canceled out by the geometry of moving parts? Could the very engine itself act as a weapon against regulations? These weren't just mechanical tweaks. They were a direct affront to NASCAR's authority. For the officials, the thrill quickly turned to panic. For competitors, it became obsession. The first inspection was a disaster. NASCAR brought in its most experienced engineers, men who had written manuals, designed tests, and enforced rules for over a decade. They opened the hood, measured the components, tapped on the block, inspected spark plug gaps, and weighed the pistons. Everything appeared within specifications. Every measurement matched the books. And yet, the car moved with a precision and efficiency that the laws of racing should have forbidden. Inspectors left frustrated, scratching their heads, secretly recording every detail, trying to create evidence of a violation that simply wasn't there. But Yunick wasn't cheating. He was creating a system so advanced, so subtly optimized, that it functioned invisibly within the rules, while utterly rewriting expectations. Rumors circulated immediately. Competitors whispered about hidden cams, secret fuel systems, phantom airflow channels. Mechanics who had been in Smokey's garage described labyrinthine blueprints filled with cryptic annotations, parts labeled in code, and tolerances that seemed impossible to hit with 1960s technology. Many believed there were custom components nobody had ever seen. Others insisted it was alchemy, a mix of genius and luck that no one would ever replicate. Yet the results were tangible. The mystery engine didn't just accelerate faster. It endured longer, cornered, sharper, and responded with a human-like intelligence to every input. Every pit crew watching it felt powerless. Every sanctioning official felt exposed. Even Junior Johnson, who would later become a legend in his own right, admitted years later that racing Yunick's engine was like trying to fight a shadow. "You could prepare all you wanted," Johnson said, "but that engine had a mind of its own. It wasn't just fast, it was unfair." In the paddock, the murmurs of sabotage began. Some thought Yunick had bribed a supplier. Others suggested he had access to secret engineering documents. The truth, of course, was far simpler and far more terrifying. Smokey had studied the sport, the inspectors, and human assumptions, and he had engineered an engine that performed outside the expectations of anyone looking for violations. By the end of the first season, NASCAR's confidence had been shaken. What began as awe at Yunick's ingenuity had transformed into a quiet panic. The mystery engine wasn't a single car, it was a proof of concept. It demonstrated that authority could be challenged, that rulebooks could be outsmarted, and that genius, when applied to machinery, could become untouchable. Competitors demanded explanations. Officials drafted new inspections. Letters were sent to crew chiefs, warning them to watch for anomalies. And yet, despite every attempt, the engine remained a riddle, a ghost, a declaration that intelligence alone could dominate the sport. Smokey Yunick didn't just build an engine, he built a legend. It was low, black, and humming with menace, appearing completely ordinary to the untrained eye, yet carrying the threat of ruin for anyone daring to challenge it. Every roar down the straightaway was a taunt. Every lap completed was a reminder that NASCAR had underestimated a man who didn't just understand engines. He understood the system, the people enforcing it, and the fragility of their authority. The story of this engine begins here, not with horsepower or torque, but with disbelief. The disbelief of an entire sport, forced to confront the impossible. What Smokey Yunick created in 1963 wasn't just a machine, it was a revelation. And in the world of stock car racing, revelations are dangerous. The origins of the mystery engine traced back not to a workshop, but to the mind of a man who refused to respect limits. Smokey Yunick wasn't content with following formulas or copying other teams. He wanted to invent the rules of racing in real time. In a modest Daytona Beach garage, surrounded by stacks of engine blocks, sheets of worn paper filled with calculations, and the faint stench of oil, he began to reimagine what a stock car power plant could do. To the untrained eye, it looked like chaos. Pistons, valves, and rods were scattered across benches. Tools hung from the walls like talismans. But every measurement, every alignment, every modification had a single purpose: to create a car that could run faster, longer, and smarter than anyone dared imagine. Yunick understood one key truth about NASCAR: the rules were only as strong as the assumptions behind them. Every regulation had a loophole. Every measurement could be circumvented with enough creativity. While other teams obsessed over cubic inches and carburetors, Smokey focused on the invisible: airflow patterns, thermal efficiency, and internal friction reduction. He experimented with cam timing that no one thought possible, harnessed intake designs that skirted every published limitation, and adjusted tolerances to operate on the edge of mechanical reality. To outsiders, it seemed reckless. To Smokey, it was precision. By mid-season, whispers began circulating in garages across the Southeast. Crews spoke of a car that didn't just accelerate at anticipated corners. Rivals murmured about an engine that seemed to breathe differently, that used every ounce of fuel with perfect rhythm, that delivered bursts of power exactly when needed. NASCAR inspectors, meanwhile, grew increasingly frustrated. They had seen every trick in the book: hidden fuel tanks, oversized carburetors, illegal rear ends, but this was something else entirely. Every measurement, every teardown, every cross-check confirmed compliance, yet the car outperformed expectations at every turn. Officials began to suspect they were no longer dealing with a conventional engine, they were dealing with a phenomenon. Smokey's brilliance wasn't just mechanical, it was psychological. He knew that fear could be as powerful a weapon as horsepower. Competitors would obsess over where he hid illegal parts, while he quietly exploited human assumptions, building a system that functioned beyond the comprehension of anyone trying to enforce fairness. The engine wasn't loud, it wasn't brash, it didn't demand attention. It was silent, efficient, relentless. Lap after lap, it delivered performance that seemed to contradict the very laws NASCAR thought they enforced. It was an invisible revolution in motion, and it terrified everyone who tried to contain it. The moment the engine first dominated a major race, the reaction was immediate and visceral. Pit crews whispered, engineers panicked, and NASCAR officials began drafting inspections that were privately doomed before they were implemented. "We've never seen anything like it," one inspector later admitted. "Every check we ran said it was legal, but the car, its behavior said otherwise." It was as if we were trying to measure smoke. Junior Johnson, who frequently drove cars engineered by Yunick, recalled the feeling, "It didn't just perform, it predicted." You turned the wheel, pressed the gas, and it was already there. You didn't just drive it, you were part of a system you didn't understand. At the same time, Smokey faced his own pressures. While NASCAR struggled to comprehend the engine, competitors were relentless. They surveilled his garage, tried to replicate his blueprints, and bribed workers for scraps of information. Yunick welcomed the scrutiny. He refined, adjusted, and innovated in response to every attempt to challenge him. For every theory about how the engine worked, Smokey had a countermeasure, an answer hidden in plain sight. By doing so, he created not just a machine, but a statement. Intelligence, not brute power, could dominate the sport. The engine's secrecy extended beyond performance. Smokey orchestrated its presentation with almost theatrical precision. During inspection, the car appeared ordinary. Every valve cover, every wire, every bracket was stock. He allowed competitors to inspect, touch, and measure, confident that they would see nothing but compliance. Yet the engine's true capability remained hidden, a silent predator under the hood. NASCAR could check the book. Smokey wrote the play. Every victory became a psychological blow, every lap a quiet demonstration of control. By the end of 1963, the mystery engine had done more than win races. It had rewritten expectations, shattered assumptions, and forced every team to reconsider what was possible. NASCAR inspectors left tracks scratching their heads, questioning not just their methods but their authority. Rivals were obsessed, some bordering on desperation. Mechanics from other garages would whisper about the car in reverent tones, as if speaking the engine's name might summon it from the shadows. And all the while, Smokey Yunick remained calm, almost invisible, letting the results speak louder than any protest or accusation. The 1963 season closed not with a single dramatic confrontation, but with an uneasy awareness. Something unprecedented had arrived in stock car racing. Not a car, not an engine, but a mind. The engine was the proof. The victories were the argument. And the questions it left behind, how, why, and by what means, would haunt NASCAR for years to come. The first race where the engine truly announced itself was at the Daytona 500 that year. Pit crews had arrived expecting the usual checks, the usual performances, the usual chatter about torque and horsepower. But what they got was a car that seemed untethered from expectation. The black and gold Chevy, calm and unassuming on the grid, suddenly became the instrument of disbelief. When the green flag dropped, the engine sang, not loudly, not brazenly, but with a precision that made rival drivers look amateur. Corner after corner, lap after lap, the Camaro, or was it a Chevelle in disguise, outperformed every calculation, every prediction, every expectation NASCAR could muster. Officials leaned over clipboards, squinting at stopwatches, questioning their own eyes. How could a car with legal displacement, legal carburetors, legal everything, leave the rest of the field gasping? Smokey Yunick's genius lay not in breaking the rules, but in erasing their relevance. He had studied the very language of NASCAR, dissected every measurement, and found a place where assumptions, rather than laws, had been written. Competitors obsessed over cubic inches and compression ratios, while Smokey focused on what they couldn't measure: flow dynamics, ignition timing, and subtle harmonic resonance that no inspector could detect. The engine didn't roar, it orchestrated. It delivered bursts of speed exactly when rivals expected weakness. Pit stops were reduced, tire wear minimized, and fuel consumption became a science rather than a gamble. To those watching, it was a miracle. To NASCAR, it was an existential threat. The backlash began almost immediately. Officials demanded teardowns. Engineers were sent to Daytona with instructions to uncover the cheat, and surveillance became near constant. Rival crews, already bruised by repeated defeats, began camping outside Yunick's garage, photographing, bribing, and even breaking into the periphery of his workshop. Yet every inspection yielded nothing. The engine was legal in every letter of the law, yet illegal in every sense that mattered. Every performance metric exceeded expectation. Every victory undermined authority. NASCAR had never seen a competitor who could simultaneously follow and defy the rules. Meanwhile, the human drama unfolded behind the scenes. Drivers who piloted the car became extensions of Smokey's mind. Junior Johnson recalled moments when he felt the car almost knew where the apex would be before he did. Crew chiefs began to panic. How could a car that obeyed every rule still dominate so completely? Boardroom meetings at NASCAR headquarters became fraught. "It's not cheating," one official reportedly said. "It's smarter than we are." Panic, disguised as procedure, began to spread. New inspections were drafted. Proposals circulated to mandate pre-race teardowns, and whispers of sabotage started to appear in internal memos. Smokey wasn't just winning, he was destabilizing the entire system. The engine itself was a puzzle, deliberately designed to mislead. Standardized components were real, but their configuration was subtle genius. Intake manifolds disguised as stock delivered airflow at exact pressures. Camshafts timed to perfection gave bursts of power at moments invisible to human reaction. Tubing, tolerances, and angles were calculated to reduce friction and maximize efficiency, yet nothing was overtly illegal. Those who tried to replicate the design often failed spectacularly. Parts would fit, numbers would check, yet the car would stumble on the track. It wasn't materials or parts, it was knowledge, experience, and anticipation fused into mechanical form. Smokey had built a mind, and the car was its body. The psychological impact on the paddock was profound. Rivals argued, accused, and speculated. Some crews accused Smokey of bribery. Others whispered about hidden fuel lines, illegal cams, or phantom technology. Officially, NASCAR found nothing. Privately, some admitted unease. The mystery engine had introduced fear, uncertainty, and obsession into a sport built on rules and predictability. Mechanics would sketch diagrams in secrecy, trying to reverse engineer something they didn't understand. Engineers from competing teams admitted later that the engine broke their brains more than it broke their cars. By mid-season, it became clear to NASCAR that this was no ordinary inspection problem. The engine forced the sanctioning body into defensive strategy. New mandates were drafted, but Smokey had already anticipated every angle. Testing protocols were changed, inspection points shifted, and officials realized that compliance alone could not ensure parity. The car remained untouchable. Every race added to its legend. Every victory, a silent indictment of NASCAR's inability to control ingenuity. Drivers raced in awe and fear. Crew chiefs shook their heads. Officials scribbled frantic memos, and Smokey Yunick watched quietly, almost invisible, letting his creation dismantle assumptions while his competitors and regulators scrambled in confusion. The engine, which no one could fully comprehend, had transformed from a tool into a weapon. Its victories were a statement. Its legality was a taunt. And the human cost stress, obsession, sleepless nights, and reputational panic was as real as the speed it delivered. Those close to the program later admitted that the engine wasn't simply an advantage. It was a declaration that intelligence could, in a single season, destabilize an entire racing ecosystem. And yet, despite the frenzy, Smokey's demeanor remained unchanged. He never boasted, never taunted openly, but the results spoke with a clarity that left no room for denial. By the end of this phase, everyone understood one undeniable truth. NASCAR had never faced an opponent like this. Not a driver, not a team, not even an engine. The mystery engine wasn't just fast, it was untouchable, invisible, and unpredictable. And with that realization, fear spread quietly, insidiously, through every garage, boardroom, and pit lane. It was no longer a question of horsepower, it was a question of comprehension. Could anyone truly understand what Smokey Yunick had created? And more importantly, could anyone ever stop it? The fallout began the moment the checkered flag fell at the last Daytona race of the season. While fans cheered, boardrooms in Charlotte were aflame. NASCAR officials, who had prided themselves on control, suddenly realized that rules alone could not contain a mind like Smokey Yunick's. The engine that no one could understand had done more than dominate races. It had shattered confidence, exposed blind spots in inspection protocols, and forced the sanctioning body into reactive chaos. Letters were drafted, memos circulated, and emergency meetings convened, all to figure out how to contain a threat that was legal, invisible, and untouchable. For a governing body built on parity and predictability, the engine was a psychological bomb. Competitors, meanwhile, were in despair. Crew chiefs tore apart cars, rebuilt engines, and ran endless simulations, trying desperately to replicate the impossible. Mechanics whispered of strange airflow patterns, cam timing that seemed impossible, and fuel delivery that defied both logic and measurement. Rumors of secret tuning methods, phantom modifications, and hidden reservoirs spread like wildfire, yet every attempt to copy the engine failed. Some admitted later, privately, that the car seemed to anticipate its own needs, as if the engine itself were alive. Junior Johnson, who had driven one of Smokey's creations, said it felt like a machine thinking for itself and making me look like I had two left feet behind the wheel. It was not just speed, it was autonomy. NASCAR's response escalated. New inspection rules were drafted, aimed at preventing any similar advantage in the future. Mandated teardowns, additional fuel and airflow measurements, and tighter tolerances were enforced, but Smokey had anticipated nearly every adjustment. For every rule they wrote, he found a loophole, a gray area, a place where physics worked in his favor and bureaucracy could not intervene. Inspectors who thought they were tightening the screws found themselves repeatedly outmaneuvered. Each race was a chess match, with Smokey always several moves ahead. The frustration in the garages was palpable. Engineers shook their heads. Drivers bit their knuckles. And Smokey Yunick remained calm, methodical, almost invisible, while the world around him spiraled into confusion. The human element of the story cannot be overstated. Rival teams grew obsessed. They stayed late in garages, plotted, argued, and occasionally betrayed one another in desperation to gain insight into Smokey's genius. Morale suffered. Some teams went bankrupt, attempting to reverse engineer the unattainable. Others simply walked away, convinced the man had rewritten the laws of racing in his favor. The engine, after all, was not just a machine. It was proof that ingenuity could disrupt hierarchy, that intelligence could outpace authority, and that talent, paired with audacity, could rewrite history. Smokey's creation did not merely beat the competition, it humiliated it, exposing the limits of knowledge and the assumptions that governed NASCAR itself. Stories of the engine's exploits spread through garages, bars, and private collections. Photographs of the car circulated, but they revealed nothing. Blueprints leaked occasionally, yet they were indecipherable without the mind that conceived them. Generations of mechanics and engineers later marveled at the audacity of the design, how a man could take entirely legal parts, configure them in a way that no one else could comprehend, and dominate an entire season. Historians now describe the engine as one of the greatest examples of outlaw engineering in motorsport. Many believe it would still outperform modern inspection protocols, because it was not just about parts, it was about vision, anticipation, and manipulation of every system around it. The legacy of Smokey Yunick's mystery engine is as unsettling as it is brilliant. NASCAR never fully caught up. Regulations changed, inspections tightened, and oversight increased. But the engine proved a simple truth. Rules cannot contain genius. Authority can only respond, never preempt. And while official histories quietly bury the details, those who were there remember the terror, awe, and disbelief that one engine could create. It was legal, untouchable, and terrifyingly effective, a weapon disguised as a race car, a mind in mechanical form. Even today, the uncomfortable truth lingers. Smokey Yunick didn't just win races. He exposed the limits of power, intelligence, and control in a sport that prided itself on fairness. He revealed that mastery can exist beyond comprehension, that rules are fragile, and that innovation, when wielded by the right mind, can become untouchable. And in the shadows of Daytona garages, in the whispered stories of crews long retired, and in the hearts of engineers who dare to think beyond the rulebook, the mystery engine lives on, a haunting question, a challenge to authority, and a reminder that history often lies about who was truly in control. If you care about the real history, subscribe.